When I was a kid, I had a great home life. But when I started school, I quickly learned that for some reason my personality was totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable to these other kids. I was just being myself. I'm not sure what it was. We didn't go out with other kids very much when I was young, I suppose. I didn't have the sort of social skills. So what I did, and mostly subconsciously or unconsciously, was I absorbed personalities from people that I, sort of respected or saw on TV. The first personality that I absorbed was Jim Carrey. I wanted to be Jim Carrey. I wanted the life that I guessed that he had. But actually, in hindsight, he wasn't that happy himself, I suppose, was he? But the Jim Carrey that we all saw in the movies, that's who I wanted to be. And in the blooper reels, I loved watching the blooper reels because he was electric then. He was so funny, even when he wasn't in character. So I wanted to be Jim Carrey as a young boy. But for some reason, that only alienated the other kids further. So, because I was very Jim Carrey. I was, I was doing all the facial expressions, and I was just mimicking him. I wasn't, adding parts I liked to my own personality. I was just stealing Jim Carrey's personality. And even to this day, there's some aspects of Jim Carrey alive in my, and in who I am. But when I grew a little bit older, when I started sort of secondary school, when I was 12, 13, 14, the personality that I adopted was that of Chandler Bing, or Chandler Bing from Friends, because I loved Friends. It was such a comfort show for me. And that remains true to this day. I'm nearly 32 years old. I have a son. I'm doing quite well for myself at the moment. Everything's going okay. And still, if I'm down or if something bothers me, if I need a little bit of comfort, I will watch Friends. And that's been the case for 20 years. 20 years, that show has been a comfort to me. And something about Chandler resonated with who I was. Both of us were damaged in a way, socially awkward. But Chandler and Matthew Perry later on, I would learn, because at first it was just Chandler, and then I got interested in Matthew Perry, the man, because him and Chandler are obviously not just similar because Matthew Perry plays Chandler, but because they have very similar anxieties and insecurities, same as me. So I saw the way that Matthew Perry and Chandler Bing armed themselves with humor, so that they were prepared. They couldn't get too hurt. They wouldn't let you too close to them because I are vulnerable. So instead, we will use sense of humor to keep you at arm's length, to charm you, to win you over, because that's a skill that we have, but ultimately to sort of keep you over there. And I saw in the character Chandler Bing a lot of myself, and so without really meaning to, I steadily became Chandler, right up until much too recently for me to admit, probably. But he was a sort of key part of my personality. At the beginning of this year, I read Matthew Perry's book, and to be honest, I was angry. I was really annoyed. I was really upset. Upset maybe is a better word. That someone who I admired, who I wanted to be like, and who I built some of my personality around when I was younger, was so flawed. It seemed to me to be throwing away such powers, that comedy, that wit, the looks, the humor, everything. He had everything, and seemed to be throwing it away. But then I remember I've had my own struggle with drugs and drink, nowhere near as extreme. But my nature isn't too dissimilar. It's very addictive, so I need to be careful with things like that. And so my anger eventually turned to a sort of sadness that he couldn't be the Matthew Perry or the Chandler Bing that I wanted him to be in my brain. But then that's a totally unfair thing to expect of him or of anyone. So when he passed away a few days ago, I was surprised at the depth of the sadness that I felt. And I bet a lot of us did. A lot of people of our generation probably was upset by that news. Because Friends was always there. And when my son gets older, the first thing I'm going to say to him, And this is something I was sure of before Matthew Perry died, and I had all these sort of feelings and revelations. The first thing I'll say to my son when he gets old enough is, don't put celebrities on a pedestal. They will only ever let you down. They want to sell you something. It's just not. It's not good. Don't make celebrities your heroes. But we didn't have a choice really back in the day. I didn't know any of that. I didn't think that I was unwise. And so Matthew Perry and Jim Carrey, and they sort of slipped in and became, father figures and friends at a time, which is very sad to say, but I was a very sad young man. I was nowhere near the fully formed, cool dude you see sat here before you. So Matthew Perry passed away, and I was very, very sad to hear about that. Very, very sad. I hope that all of his friends and family are okay, and I wish them all the best. I'm sorry for their loss. But in a strange way, it's all of our loss. Anyone who loved Friends, who used it as an escape, anyone who loved Chandler Bing, we all felt that loss, I think, that day. So anyway, I didn't want to get too deep, but that's really been bothering me the last few days. I want to talk about it. We haven't released a podcast for a little while because we're having such technical issues. As some of you know, we had issues with the camera, we had issues with the lights, and now we're having issues with the microphone, where there seems to be a constant hiss underneath all the audio. So we're trying to figure that out. So we're slowly getting there, I promise. Me, George, and Kevin will be back to make you laugh, to make you cry. Not because we talk about emotional things, but via our own stupidity, probably. We're back around this table, putting the world to rights and interviewing some amazing guests soon. I promise. We're just working out the technical stuff. So I suppose rest in peace, Matthew Perry. Thank you for the laughs and the escapism when I really needed it. I hope you're okay, listener. We miss talking to you, so reach out on social media. We'd love to hear from you, and we want to make sure you're all okay and happy out there. And I promise the Steve Calis Show will be back soon. Thanks, everyone.